As we progress further within the Toronto real estate market and GTA real estate market in 2023, what are some key mistakes and errors that Toronto and GTA home buyers and sellers should avoid? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. Mistakes to avoid within the context of the Toronto real estate market and GTA real estate market in 2023. As always, let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realty Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Sam, a Toronto real estate agent working with buyers and sellers across the GTA. On this channel, I like to discuss all things GTA real estate market, whether it's market stats, market trends, market facts, building reviews, buyer advice, seller advice, tenancy laws, area analysis, and so much more. So feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review, and you can find my contact information in the description box with regards to where you can get in touch with me and other social media platforms where I post different types of content. In 2023, we have to understand that we're not going to be dealing with the same type of market we saw in 2021 and 2022. It's going to be largely a high interest rate environment. It's going to be largely a down market, and volume in terms of sales and transactions, I believe, frankly, will remain relatively low, lower than 2022 going forward. There are going to be sellers that feel a degree of pressure, whether it's pressure to the point of foreclosure or pressure to the point of going to the market. And of course, a lot of buyers will have their purchasing power completely eliminated or greatly reduced. So seeing as to how we're shifting towards a completely different environment, I'm going to go through some mistakes and errors that both buyers and sellers should avoid within the Toronto real estate market in 2023. Let's start. Number one, a mistake buyers should avoid: not being aggressive enough on price. That's right. If you are a Toronto home buyer, whether you're a Toronto condo buyer looking for a condo within the 700s, or if you are in the market for a freehold detached property in the $2 million price points. In 2023, you have to understand that it's not like the 2021 and half of 2022 real estate markets in GTA. The buyer is the one who is the asset. Whereas in contrast, in 2022, half of 2022, I would say confidently, and all of 2021, it was the seller, the product, the inventory that was the asset. So since the buyer is the asset, since demand is going to be lower than supply for the most part, although that is a bit complicated, buyers should use the fact that they are the asset as a point of leverage. And part of using that as a point of leverage is being aggressive on price. Now, what I certainly do not mean is offering ridiculously below asking, $300,000, $400,000 below asking, when the comps do not justify that whatsoever. So when I say be aggressive on price, I am certainly saying it within reason. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me break it down to you like this. There is what the property is asking for, the asking price of a property. Let's say it's around $600,000. Then there is a question of what something is worth. For instance, that $600,000 property, according to comparables, could be worth within the range of $555 to $575. Of course, this is not a clear science like mathematics or physics. Being aggressive on price does not mean offering $400,000. Being aggressive on price means, okay, we know what it is relatively worth according to the micro and macro market conditions in that given moment, which is $555, $575, but let's try to push for the $520s, the $530s. Not let's offer $400,000 or $450. That is what I mean by aggressive. At the end of the day, if you do get it at a far lower price than what it's worth, maybe the $530s, $520s, you've got a great deal. If you get it in the range that it is worth, you got a neutral deal. And if you get it at 600 or 590, well, of course, in that case, you kind of overpaid. So seeing as to how buyers, those who are actively looking and have the money to buy, have the pre-approval to buy, seeing as to how you are the leverage, you can afford to look for longer and be a little bit more assertive. And this transitions into number two, which is another buyer mistake that I hope to see buyers avoid in 2023, namely being purchasing a freehold property without an inspection condition. What is an inspection condition? An inspection condition is basically a condition where you, the buyer, having now agreed to a purchase price, other terms and conditions such as closing dates, will get to now do an inspection of the property at your own expense. And if you do not receive an inspection report satisfactory to your liking, you can simply not waive that condition and get your deposit back. So in a sense, an inspection condition condition is a protection for the buyer, and usually the duration is anywhere from 3 to 7 business days, with 5 business days being the most common. So you have those amount of business days to perform the inspection, get the inspection report, review the inspection report, and make up your mind with regards to waiving the inspection condition or not waiving it. So why is this more important than ever in 2023? Well, as I previously mentioned, buyers have the leverage for the most part. And what we saw in 2021 and most of 2022 were buyers making offers without inspection conditions in place because the market was so competitive. There was such high demand because interest rates were much lower. The cost of borrowing was much less. Prices were skyrocketing. That buyers, to differentiate themselves from other buyers, to make their offer the strongest possible offer, were removing all conditions, all protections to make the offer more palatable for the seller. Well, even if you see a property and it's a brand new property, most likely not much is wrong with the property. I'm not saying in all cases, but in most cases, you should still include an inspection condition, because even if you do not need the inspection condition, you can use it to negotiate on other terms. For instance, fine, I'll remove the inspection condition, but let's bring down the price a little bit more. Furthermore, inspection conditions are also key on the financing side of things. Now let's shift to number 3, a mistake sellers should avoid, which is if you're attempting to list your property and sell it in 2023, you have to make sure that it is as presentable as possible. So this means if there are scratch marks in the living room and the furniture is a little bit busy, it's a little bit messy, if possible, you should try to paint over it, maybe install new light fixtures, and get the property professionally staged. And of course, it goes without saying, professional photography. Now, people like to downplay this all the time. I've heard people say, oh my God, that doesn't matter. It's all a waste of money. Professional staging, professional photography, painting over smudge marks, or fixing little damages here and there. That makes no difference at the end of the day. And that is somewhat actually accurate in a hot market, once again, as we saw in 2022, where everything was on fire. Properties were selling $100,000 above asking and $100,000 more than the previous sold every other week. But that's not the market we're operating in. In a slow down market where sellers don't have the leverage, you have to make your property as presentable as ever. And that actually does make a key difference. Buyers usually make up their mind with regards to the property they're viewing within the first minute to 2 minutes. First impressions are very important, and buyers in this high interest environment where there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of caution from the buyer's end are not just going to spend money on anything they see. So if you could afford to renovate your property before listing it, if you could afford to do minor touch-up jobs with regards to paint or installing some new light fixtures, getting it professionally staged, this all goes towards the marketing of the property, and you're going to get a lot more showings. And the more showings you get, as long as it's not false advertising, the more offers you're likely to get. It's no longer a market where you can just list any piece of crap and it's gonna get 3 offers and 50 showings. That's not how it works anymore. Mistake number 4 of the mistakes to avoid within the Toronto real estate market in 2023. Let's stick with sellers. If you're going to list your studio property, a studio condo unit for sale in 2023, make sure it's not tenanted, and let me tell you why. Because out of every other property type that exists, whether it's within condos or freehold, semis, townhomes, studio units are the property type that has the largest investor base that makes up the largest portion of the overall buyer base. So if you are looking to sell your studio unit, most of your buyers will most likely be investors. And an incumbent tenant is one of the biggest risks an investor can take, especially with a studio unit, because the investor has not screened your tenant, so they don't have any certainty with regards to the qualifications of your tenant. And furthermore, as part of assuming your tenant, they would also have to assume the rent the tenant is paying towards you, which in most cases, especially in 2023, is going to be the lower rents we saw early in 2022 and late in 2021. Because the gap between market rent of what you'd be able to get today if you were to list your studio unit for rent versus what the incumbent tenant is most likely paying is a very large gap in a lot of cases. In some instances, it's actually a gap of $700. So of course, it's easier said than done. You cannot just kick out tenants, right? It has to be legal. But my suggestion to you is wait until the tenancy is maybe over, or maybe try to arrange a cash for keys in a legal fashion with your tenant with mutual consent. If not, of course, it's complicated, but it's preferred, and it's a mistake in my opinion to list a tenanted studio property because so much of the buyer base are investors. If it was any other property type, it's still probably better to avoid, especially so with studio units. Continuing on this list of mistakes to avoid within the Toronto real estate market in 2023, let's shift back towards buyers. If you are a Toronto condo buyer in 2023, it will be a mistake for you not to include a status of certificate condition. What is a status of certificate condition? Well, much like the inspection condition I explained earlier, a status of certificate condition allows you to do your due diligence for anywhere from 3 to 7 business days on the status of certificate of the condominium corporation. Now, what is a status of certificate? Well, shortly put, in a very summarized fashion, a status of certificate is basically the bill of health. It's like the blood work of a condominium. It shows you whether the condo is being sued or subject to any potential lawsuits, financials of the condominium corporation. It has the condominium bylaws and what's illegal and what's not illegal. It has details pertaining to any potential reserve fund issues, which goes towards the more of the financials again. So all these things are very important. Now, why is it especially important in 2023? Well, once again, we come back to the high interest rate environment. Lenders such as banks and institutions are more strict than ever on improving mortgages. So if you're purchasing a condominium where, for instance, there's a projected increase of the maintenance around 10% for the next couple of years, well, that's going to be a key issue, because if a lender is providing you around $500,000 for a purchase, they want to know in 3 years where your maintenance has increased by a factor of 30% if you're going to be able to carry that cost and actually still pay your mortgage. And that's just one example. There are a slew of other examples. Sometimes when a condominium corporation is subject to a special assessment, banks won't approve mortgages for those properties either. I'm not saying all the time, by the way, and I'm not a mortgage broker by any means, so verify everything you hear with a professional mortgage agent. But in my experience, if you're purchasing a property within a condominium that is subject to a major lawsuit that's not covered by insurance, or subject to a major hefty special assessment, well, the bank, the lender will get scared, and you might just end up losing your deposit if you had not included a status review condition. So make sure, once again, to be assertive as a Toronto condo buyer, as a Toronto buyer overall. Use your protection, insert these clauses, negotiate for the best deal possible. Moving forward, let's move towards the pre-construction purchases. If you are a pre-con buyer, it will be a monumental mistake for you in 2023, in my opinion, to purchase to assign. What does that mean, purchase to assign? Well, pretty much what that means is if you are a pre-construction purchaser, you purchase a pre-construction unit, not with the intentions of actually closing on the unit when the construction is completed, the property is officially incorporated with the city, and you close with the builder. No, your intentions are not that. Your intentions are actually to assign the agreement of purchase and sale in the meantime. This is often a tactic that works out in very hot markets and people can make profits. But the reason it would be a mistake for you to purchase a pre-construction unit within the pre-construction condo market with the purposes and intentions of assigning is because, as we speak today, that strategy is backfiring at such a monumental level for a lot of investors. Right now, a lot of pre-construction investors are panicking as to how to close on a purchase they did not anticipate closing on in a high interest environment. In other words put, they purchased pre-construction units back in 2021, 2020, when they thought rates would stay very low, not anticipating they'd be closing in 2023, 2024, when rates are very high and they simply can't afford to close on them. They're taking massive losses trying to offload these purchases. And as a general rule, I think if you're going to be a pre-con investor, you should assume you're closing on the property and you should be able to close on the property on your purchase. Let's go through another mistake that sellers should avoid within the Toronto real estate market and GTA real estate market, which is listing your property for bidding. Now, this is one where I'll give a caveat. There are certain circumstances where listing a property for a bidding war in 2023 will actually be a good strategy, but you have to be very particular about with regards to the sub-market, the micro market of that property. Because if we see there's a lot of demand for real estate in a given community, but no supply, listing it for bidding might actually work out well. But on a more general scale, for most people, I don't believe it is a correct strategy to price your property for a multiple offer scenario / a bidding war. This strategy, once again, was a strategy that was used very commonly in 2022, a little bit less in 2021, but in the peak market of 2022, every listing that was coming onto the market was for bidding. In today's market, in a very slow market that is more buyer advantageous, is a down market. If you price your property for bidding, most times, once again, not all the time, but most times, what most likely will happen is you won't get an offer and you will have to relist the property at the price which you should have listed in the first place. So once again, this is not an outright mistake. It is something, if you're working with a seasoned real estate professional, where it can actually be the correct strategy, but you cannot do it blindly like a lot of people did early 2022, because back then it actually made sense. I sold a lot of properties that I just listed for bidding. We got upwards of 30 to 40 showings, and we got 3 to, in some instances, 5, 8 offers. And that's actually on the low end. A lot of properties were actually receiving 20 offers in some situations. So this bidding war strategy, pricing it under market value, worked out in 2022 and 2021. It won't work for the most part in 2023.